Hi everyone, welcome to 2024. This is Beyond the Base Game, where I give my review verdicts on expansions to games, where a lot of people tend to skip expansions and not really give them much, limelight, shall we say. But expansions are something I look forward to with games. If I already like the game, then having an expansion is something I'm going to be excited about, as opposed to a completely new game which could be really, really good or really, really rubbish. So expansions are definitely the way forward. Sorry I'm a little bit late with this one. I said I was going to do the Ark Nova expansion at some point back in 2023, which feels so long ago already, but yeah, I got a bit distracted with some stuff, so whether anybody cares about it right now, I don't know, but I'm doing the video anyway. So this is the long-awaited expansion to Ark Nova, Marine Worlds, and it's not a big expansion. Firstly, I don't have the box. I mean, once you've got the content out and shoved it in the game, you no longer need the box. It's a titchy little box, it's small, it's literally just there for packaging. But you don't get a huge amount in it. In fact, this isn't even sort of everything you get in it. I've just taken a selection of cards and say, but the expansion is more of the good stuff for the most part. There's one or two different little mechanical tweaks that have been thrown in, but generally, this expansion is one of those, did you like Ark Nova? Well, we've tweaked a couple of things, added one or two extras here that might improve things, and we've introduced a new creature type. So I'm just going to go through the various bits of the expansion and give you my thoughts as well as a final verdict.
Do it, do it, do it.
Very small tweaks. For starters, you've got a new university now. So these universities are the same university, but there's some varieties of each. And essentially what they do is not only do they give you a science symbol, but they also give you an icon for a particular animal type, and you get to pick which one you want, so it's not restricted each game. But on top of that, you also get to look through the deck of cards for the first type of that animal that arises and grab it to put in your hand. I cannot stress how good this university is. I mean, most people are sort of thinking, well, how am I going to get 5 predators or 5 primates for this sort of thing? Well, if you take that university, you get 1 icon already, and then you get an animal of the icon on top of that. So that's already 2 of the 5 you're looking for. This university is a staple, especially if it's like linking with one of the green objectives that you've got out in front of you. I mean, certainly if you've got a creature type one as one of the base projects, you are gunning for that, that university as fast as you can. But even if you're not, it's just a nice way to get a science symbol and also just get another animal card. Maybe I'm not going for the base conservation projects. Maybe I've got something else in mind. I've got tons of reptiles and I'm going to do something good with those. Well, might as well help to get another reptile. So this university, easy to include, and they even managed to revamp the board for it. So, this board here that you had next to the table, there's now a little slot there for the university. A little basic one goes in there, and then you select which one of the particulars you want. But yeah, other than that, the board is literally just for that change. So chuck away the old and in with the new. Alright, on top of that, we also have some new tweaks to some of the old cards. So some of the old cards have had their iconography changed to fit with some of this expansion. But you've got only, sadly, one new green conservation project, which relates to sea animal dwellers. We'll get onto those a little bit later, but yeah, not much change with the initial green projects, unfortunately. I was hoping there'd be a few more. But we do have some more objective cards. They have not only added a few extras, but they've also tweaked some of the old ones to balance them a little bit. Not all of them, unfortunately. There's 1 or 2 that I wish they'd still gone back and balanced, but the ones that needed a lot more effort certainly have been balanced a bit more. So, if I grab the ones very specifically that I definitely know have certainly been balanced, here we go. So, a climbing park and aquatic park. Well, they were always quite tricky to do, particularly the rock icons, but they've been made slightly easier, so it was a bit easier to get the maximum conservation points there. Large animals, that was a nightmare to do at times. You needed at least 5 or 6 large animals before you got max points. Now it's essentially 1 green point per large animal. It's a lot better now. And sponsor cards, this one I didn't think needed much tweaking. I mean, I can get 10 sponsor cards fine. I'm hungry for sponsors when I play this game. But apparently they thought it needed to be slightly easier, so they put it down to 9 for the maximum 4 green points. Again, I'm not entirely sure why they did that. And I know there was another one. Here we go. Oh yeah, this one definitely needs some balancing. The Conservation Zoo project. Gain green points for supporting those projects. Man, is this one a hard one to do at the best of times. Well, they've reduced it by 1, so it's a little bit easier. But yeah, you have to get lucky with drawing a lot of green projects out of the deck and being able to fulfill them in order to do well with this objective. But it could be worse. You could have the Naturalist Zoo, which I still don't get why anybody would pick this objective out of the 2, and it hasn't been tweaked at all. honestly, I don't know how anybody does well with this. I did well with it once, but I had a very, very weird setup for that. I mean, I was literally doing reptiles and birds at the same time, so that I was basically putting out a few small enclosures, which I then put into a reptile house and bird house, freeing up all the previous enclosures to put new stuff in. That was a weird game I was playing, and I don't see how I'm going to be able to do that on a regular basis with this. But yeah, I'm surprised they didn't tweak that one.
And everybody's okay with this?
But that's not the big deal, because you now have additional ones. And oh yeah, the research one, sorry. Research one is being made slightly harder, which is probably a good thing, because it was a little bit too easy to get the research icons for the research zoo before. But we've got some very nice new ones. So if I separate those out, cool. Quite a few here. There's at least 6. There might even be another one in there that I missed. But for example, you now have, specialized species. So choose an animal category that's not on the base projects, get points for those. So, and there's one for the continent icon as well. So what I just said a minute ago about using that university to find an icon that isn't on the green base projects, well, you've got 2 actual projects here that could benefit from that. Designer zoo, get green conservation points for different shaped buildings in your zoo. That's a weird one, because you've got all the different enclosures, you've got the little single ones, but in order to do well with this, you essentially have to get a lot of those sponsors that give you all those weird special enclosures and make sure you get ones of different shapes. It's quite a fun one to go for, though you've got to do some hefty planning with your zoo. International Zoo, remember the biodiverse zoo that I mentioned? Sorry, the biodiverse zoo I didn't mention, where you have to get more of certain animals than the person to your right. Well here, gain 1 of each continent icon, of which you have more than the person to your right. Icons on partner zoos count twice. So this one, yeah, there's a couple in here that make you focus a lot more on the continent icons rather than specific animals, which is a cool, fun way to play. And there's a couple in here that were actually based on some, I think a few of these actually were based on like fan-made variants, and they've just been tweaked to make them a little bit more balanced. So you've got, gain points for conditions on cards in your zoo. That's quite a cool one. And one that's particularly fun, which is gain points for sets of kiosk and pavilions in your zoo. This one was a little bit too easy in the past. This one is not too bad now. You need to get 5 sets, like 5 sets of a kiosk and a pavilion to do well with this. And of course, yes, that means your income is going to be good, but then have you got enough space to put in your animals? Well, that's entirely down to you. But yeah, more variety with the brown objectives, a university here, a green project here. Yes, I would have liked more green projects, but those objectives are going to make games a little bit more interesting from a strategic perspective. You've also got a few little pieces to replace some of the initial components that you had before, which is a bit weird for me because I replaced all my original components, whether I prefer the Etsy ones or these new ones. But if you didn't go onto Etsy to get yours, then these are a surefire replacement. You've essentially got like new player markers for things like the reputation hat, and your appeal counter now actually looks like a ticket. The conservation thing now looks like a shield. And also your tokens that used to be just cubes are now a specific type of animal. So I got the blue ones here, and they're these big giant fishies that are a lot more bigger. They're more pronounced on the table. You shouldn't be like dropping these on the floor anytime soon. The question is, do I prefer those to these little Etsy elephant heads that I got? Well, I'll have to make a decision on that. But as I say, component upgrades are never a bad thing.
There's always a bigger fish.
So let's get on to the 2 main aspects of this one. Firstly, the sea dwellers. The sea dwellers is a new type of animal, and I'm not gonna sort of go into too much detail with this, and I certainly haven't grabbed every single one out of the deck, but as well as adding in a few other sort of like conservation projects and sponsors in, there is now a new type of creature for sea dwellers, and these sea dwellers are essentially just like normal animal cards, but there's a couple of little unique twists to them. Firstly, you have to build them in aquariums. So you now have a tiny little 2 space here and a weird sort of T-shaped 5-1 here that anybody can build. So you don't have to have build upgrade in order to grab them. But, or maybe you do for the big one, I can't remember. But the idea with these is that they take up space much like reptiles and birds. So you have to find space in the aquarium. So you're only going to have space for 7 points worth of Aquarius creatures. So it's not like you can spam them the entire game. But a lot of sea creatures don't take up any space at all. It's a bit like having a tiny little lizard. Well, how much space in an aquarium does a tiny little goldfish take? It's going to have that effect. But the idea with these is that for the most part they function just like other creatures. They have sizes, they have costs, they have icons, a new octopus symbol for sea dwellers, that kind of thing. They have solo abilities if you don't want to use the mean abilities on them, like the the peaceful mode, appeal points and that. For the most part they are the same. Couple of little major tweaks though. Firstly, the reef dweller effect. It's going to get hard to say that properly, but the idea with this is that they have icons on the right hand side of the card, where if they have this, when you play the card, you trigger all the reef dweller effects of all the creatures you have out in play. So it's kind of one of these compounding bonus effects. You play one, you get $3. Great. Now I play another one. Oh, that gives me an incentive, that gives me an X token and $3 again. And if you can get a lot of these out during the game, you can rack up some pretty nifty stuff with these. It's not on every single Sea Dweller card, but it's cool if you can get a few of them, and some of them have got pretty hefty bonuses, particularly if you grab some of the like manta rays or sand tiger sharks and stuff like that, that can give you anything like a green conservation point for this one. It's kind of insane. But yeah, they've got some really cool effects, and they are again, you've got this gorgeous photography, I'd say artwork, the photography artwork in this one, which, makes for some really nice looking creatures. I mean, stuff in the water generally looks really nice, unless it's crab-like, in which case it's nightmare fuel. Crab people, crab people. But the other thing I love about these is that they've all got this tidal effect on there, and the idea is that what people didn't like about the original game from the big card deck was getting through enough cards. They were worried that the display became a little stagnant. Well, the advantage with this is that every time you flip one of these cards from the deck, it automatically pushes the display another space. So now you can't get complacent and wait for the coffee marker to come along before you realize, oh, those 2 cards are going to go away. If somebody takes 2 or 3 cards from the display and fills it up with a couple of Sea Dwellers, then suddenly all those cards have just got pushed through again. So it's not that you get through the deck any faster from going through all the cards, but it alleviates the problem which I was fearing, which is if you're going to add more cards to the deck, is it going to get too diluted? Is it going to get the same problem that Terraforming Mars did? Well, this fixes that problem 95% of the time, because the display will now churn through a lot quicker if you do pick up those creatures, and so it adds a little bit of variety. The only time I have seen it get a little stagnant though is when the entire display is full of those sea creatures. Then it gets a little bit unwieldy at that point. But then, let's face it, if the display is full of sea creatures, then you might want to build an aquarium and start getting them, because they're there, and obviously everybody else who's searching for predators or herbivores is going to be slowed down while you're there going, shark, the manta ray and plankton, and you'll be gaining while they're not. So why trust randomness when the stuff's out there for you? But yeah, they're cool. I mean, they're easy enough to teach the new players, because all you've really got to do is teach the reef dweller effect. Other than that, everything else is the same iconography as before, and you can handle the tidal effect yourself. So there's really not a huge amount of extra rules to teach with them, and it's just a nice, cool, extra thing that you could almost skip entirely if you want. I've played plenty of Ark Nova games with this expansion in where I haven't touched a single sea creature. Fair enough, you don't have to. It's another option, it's another path you can take, another thing you can do, which is one thing I love about this game, having all that variety. We haven't even got to my favourite bit though. Oh my word, do I love this. This is what I was excited for. New action cards. So you've got the 5 action cards, animals, sponsors and cards and stuff like that. And they're all basic, everybody's got the same thing. And I love this typewriter mechanic where you build up an action card, get it to a high level, and then it churns back to number 1, and then it carries on again, and then it churns back. I call it the typewriter mechanic. I don't know if that will ever become an official thing, but that's the name I give to it anyway. But this I love. Basically, there is now a selection, I think of 4 each, possibly even more than that actually. In fact, what does it say in the book? Let's be certain on this. Here we go. Let's get the components right.
12 seconds later.
20 alternate action cards. So there's essentially 4 each of the 5 different cards that are in the game. And all of these are basically the similar action cards. There's no new actions, but they're tweaks to the other actions. And what happens is you have a quick drafting phase before the game starts, where you draft so many that you basically have 3 to choose from, and then you have to pick 2 of them for your set. You can't have the same one twice, obviously, but you could basically take a sponsors and an association. Somebody else might take an association and an animal. Somebody else might take a build and a cards, so they can do whatever they like. But these give you new tweaks to the gameplay, potential new strategies to go for, advantages that no other player has. And I absolutely love these. I do not want to play a game of Ark Nova outside of Board Game Arena, because they haven't got this expansion. Hurry up, Board Game Arena, and get this expansion. But, I will not want to play a normal game of Ark Nova that doesn't have these. actually, that's probably a lie. I'll play Ark Nova regardless, but still, I want this expansion in here because the thing that this does, it just makes every game feel fresh. And bear in mind, there's 4 of each type, right? 4 of each kind. You're only going to pick 2 for yourself, and that's only 1 from a particular set. So you might take, you know, an association card in one game. You could feasibly play another 3 whole games of Ark Nova with another association card replacement and still not have the same association card. So the amount of variety this adds is insane, and if they want to expand on this in later days, and all they've got to do is just give me a little card pack with more of these in, and I'll be happy. But some of these effects are pretty cool. I mean, you can pay money to build over rock and water spaces. First animal you play in a turn costs less. Every time you, cards, your first card gets you to do a digging effect. Associations, you gain incentive markers if your strength's higher than the action you're doing. You now get to mark cards on the animals, which means that you can put a cube on one of the cards, and if it falls off the board you get it, or if somebody takes it they give you money, which is quite a cool thing. Sponsors, I mean, you can have, you may discard a sponsor to take a sponsor from the display into hand. I love this card. The amount of times that I get caught with a sponsor that I don't particularly want, and then an awesome sponsor turns up, it's like, bye-bye, yoink, you know, very handy. You get the hunter effect if you have no cards in your hand after playing it. If you gain money with the sponsor's action, gain free money more. And this is just the blue side of the effects that I'm reading here. Cards doesn't tend to give you much more funky abilities, but they tend to let you draw snap easier. But this is just the blue side. Yes, they can all be upgraded as well, and essentially it, you know, updates that, well, it upgrades the ability that this gives you, like the special ability, but sometimes makes it even better. I mean, like, you know, here we go. So if you play only one animal at strength 5, you can ignore one condition. Flip it over, you can do that at strength 3 or more. That's pretty nice. And then there's just like a lot of other little cool tweaks, but man, these, you know, the sponsors one, here you go, yeah. Additionally, you may discard a sponsor card to gain $4. Great moneymaker this. Flip it over. Okay, here we go. Additionally, you may discard a card, gain $4, or reduce the level of one played card by 2 strength rating. It's like, you know, these really do unlock lots of cool paths for the game, and I love them to bits. I cannot wait to play another game of Ark Nova to try out a new combo of cards. They don't necessarily have to even link to each other. They just are funky little effects. And you might go through a game and not use the effect that much, but again, you have something unique that other players don't. That's always a cool thing.
You're not sleeping with it, are you, Ray?
So that's kind of it for Ark Nova Marine Worlds. There's not a lot more to say about it. It gives you more of the good stuff, adds a bit more variety, but in terms of new mechanics, you've got a couple of little tweaks with these new sea creatures, which are really cool, and you have these new action cards, which are pretty much a staple in any Ark Nova game that I play with my copy of the game. And all of this will fit in the box, no problem. I mean, I've got the folded space insert in here, and I can still fit all of this stuff in there. I mean, you'll be able to fit the Aquarians in some of these trades. There's plenty of room for the cards, and there's more than enough room for the pieces. And I believe E-Raptor, I believe, has got a new insert, like a UV printed insert that can fit specifically like the new Marine World stuff. So, you know, storage is not going to be a problem. It's a cheap expansion, relatively cheap, and it just makes the game even better. As if you could make a 10 out of 10 game better. Well, yes, you can. No game is ever flawless. But what can I say about this expansion? I love it. It's a 10 for me. You know, everything in this expansion I like. Would I have liked a few more green-based conservation projects? Yes, that is a minor niggle. But other than that, there's really not much else negative I can say about this. You know, everything improves the game more so than when it first came out, and I already adore this game. So, yeah, what are you watching this video still for? If you like Ark Nova, go grab this expansion. It's pretty much a must-buy.
Shut up and take my money!
So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the site. Let's try and get it in the hot review section. That'd be fantastic. Don't forget to check out the Q&A that I did at the start of this year, where basically I answer Patreon questions, but at one point I even explain how my rating system works. So if you're wondering why I give ratings of 5s and 6s and 4s now and again, it's not because I think they're garbage. There's an explanation for why I do that. By all means, check it out. Until next time, remember, regardless of how much you want to just salivate over a game in your collection, it's still only a game, so wipe it clean when you're done. Take care, and bye for now.